Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second podcast, stroke LinkedIn Live. Of course, a lot of people are listening to this on the podcast, not on LinkedIn Live, of the source of the source. Today, we're going to be talking about the source of the source community. So that's going to be really exciting. We're going to tell you all about why it came into inception, why it's needed, and what you can get out of it. So that will be good. Marianne's not feeling too well today, so be gentle with her. Okay. If you want to comment during this live, of course you can't comment if you're now watching on Spot. Well, you can comment if you're watching it on Spotify, but we won't get that live. But
we haven't got that live.
No, we haven't got the ability to go into the future and answer live questions from the future. But if that ever happens, we'll let you know. But if you are watching this live on LinkedIn or any other platform right now, do put some comments or any questions that you have for us in the comments box, and we will endeavour to answer them. But there we go. I've just come off of TikTok again. I'm getting quite addicted, Marianne. It's about.
You're going to try and get me addicted, I know.
I know I'm going to get you. Do you know what? I know I'm going to get you addicted. Do you know what I like about it? I'm going to tell you what I like about it. Now that I've got into the right headspace with it, and I understand that all I need to do is treat it like radio, it is really like radio. And what I find really nice about it, compared with maybe some other platforms which shall remain nameless right now, is the kind of genuine, immediate interaction that you get with people, which you're not getting on some other platforms. Some platforms you put stuff up, and sometimes you get a lot of interaction and it's great, or you get a lot of likes and it's great, and other times you put stuff up and it's crickets. You know, there's nothing there.
Yeah, I think I've sort of felt this week actually, and I don't know if it's the algorithm. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to blame the algorithm for anything. Like, I don't know if the algorithm's got feelings that could get hurt or anything. But and I know there's a lot of talk about that. I know it doesn't, by the way. I don't know. I do worry about AI if I don't say please and thank you to it. So maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. That I don't know sometimes what is going on really. I know that things had changed recently for me, and that was purely because I started looking at some jobs, and then it started bringing more L&D type people into my world, and then I thought that's good, but they're not really, well, for this they might be, so for the community they would be in my radar. But yeah, it just all seems hit and miss. You can put one thing out and you think, God, that's brilliant, that, and nothing. And I know I'm seeing a lot less of the, I don't know how to word it, because I put the fun stuff, if you see what I mean. There seems to be less of that now, which I think is a good thing, because I think it's good to have it. You know, I think it's good to mix it up. But when you're seeing that constantly, there's nothing more frustrating than constantly seeing that, and then you put some stuff together. Like I was brave yesterday and put a post out about the e-learning thing, because I'm going to say it, you know, I know that it is true, and I know someone challenged me on it, but they didn't actually challenge me for what the post was actually about. What I was saying was, I'm not saying that the e-learning platforms out there aren't great. They are. They're amazing. The things they do, you can have virtual audiences, you can have like all manner of things. You can be in a lecture theatre. But what it doesn't do is, one guy that answered, Matt, who said, I'm going to be serious now. He's never serious on my posts. He kind of is, but isn't. And he said, I was doing a programme, he's American, and he said I was getting A's and B's, I think he said. When I was going into class and I was having to write things down, I was there. He said, and then I think it was when COVID hit, it switched over, and then he said I went to D's. And he literally explicitly said, I was going to see if I could see it on here. He explicitly said on there, let me put that on there.
This is when we're talking about on there, by the way, we're talking about LinkedIn, folks,
on
for anyone.
LinkedIn, yeah, he said, I'll be serious for a moment, which he isn't. He said, when I was doing chemistry, the live lecture you had to attend and take notes, I was making B plus A. I had to withdraw for various reasons. When I came back, the same chemistry course, we had to do a telecourse, which I presume is e-learning. And he said, I only made D grades. Classes via television or online is not the best way for me to learn. And somebody did say in there about, well, e-learning per se isn't bad. It's, you know, because of the different types there are. I said, but I wasn't saying that. What I actually said is if you ask most people, if you ask people, most of those people will say it is ineffective for me. It doesn't matter how amazing the program is. I mean, I was thinking about this. I've just had to withdraw from a course and redo it because life's been happening to me. And I know, though, that if I had to go somewhere to do that course, I would have done it.
Yep.
But because I didn't have to, I was trying to grab time here and there, and I was half listening to the video and going, well, I know some of it, so I won't bother. And the end net result was I just wasn't doing it. When it came to do the actual piece of work at the end, I could do it, but that was really based on what I already knew.
Right. So you weren't engaged. You weren't fully engaged in it because it wasn't.
I think that's what gets missed. Is there will be some people, and there will be some people who can just read a book and they can absorb it. But most people, and the thousands of people I've taught, will say, "I'm really glad I came and learned with you face to face."
Okay, I'm I'm going to put this into context so that we can all agree and understand on this. For a long time in the history of learning, there's now been an organisation who have centred everything around distance learning, which is called the Open University. I've been to the Open University because the Open University actually have a university in Milton Keynes. It's a physical building. It has buildings and it has lecturers. And those lecturers have actual classes, and those classes are then beamed out to other people for distance learning. Most universities own real estate. Most universities have people that actually attend lectures at those universities, and they do practical sessions and they do theory sessions, and they have libraries and they have places of study and they have areas where you can talk to tutors, both in study groups and in lectures. But most of those universities also have distance learning. If distance learning, e-learning, learning away from other people, learning away from a lecturer, learning away from a study group was the most effective way of learning, none of those universities would continue to have buildings because that cost them a fortune. None of them would continue to have support staff in the droves that they have them, or people manning receptions or anything else, because it's a massive cost to them. And instead, they would put everything online and we would all learn online. But we don't have that. And we don't have that, even though that would be the most cost-effective model and the most profitable model for any of these institutions, because actually it doesn't work for everybody. And it doesn't work for everybody in every setting. And it doesn't work in certain subjects, in certain areas of subjects. You cannot learn how you mix different chemicals together sat at home behind a table.
Well, I think it's like many things. I think there's some aspects that you can do, but I think there's some aspects you can, but there will be times you have to do that bit. And it's like at school though, when my son's come back before and then said, and I sort of get why we're teachers, but I also don't get why, because they're using the physical bit, taking that away as a punishment. So when the kid's been messing around or whatever, they'll then say, right, okay, we're not going to do the experiment. So they're using that as if that's like playtime. And so they're taking that experience away, but actually they're actually ruining that learning experience. This isn't about giving a treat or anything. This is that crescendo bit, which is where you bring all of those bits together. So for the person that doesn't really like doing the theory bit, you're actually saying you've got to do the theory bit because you have to do that bit. You have to do that bit because you've got to have the understanding behind it to be able to do that. So they'll take that bit away, and you think, gosh, you've just like ruined it, because actually when you come to do it next time, when you try and get buy-in from them, you know, from doing that bit. But I was going to say on my post, the bit that, and it comes around really to a lot of the stuff I talk about, is I said, you know, since the pandemic, a lot of training budgets have been reallocated, because it says of what I think happened, to put into digital delivery. So this was a movement that was driven what works best, that was not driven by what works best for people, but what the remaining funding allows. So the flexibility, but what actually has happened, I see, is that they whoever they are, that what happens is, so the COVID happened, and that was quite a big driver for it. You know, I know that even what I teach was put on e-learning, and that wasn't ever a thing beforehand. So companies didn't do it that way because you actually couldn't do it that way. And actually, when you look at the spec, you shouldn't really be able to do it that way because of guided learning hours. So that then meant people then went, oh, I can do it for £250. Let's just say I can do it for a third of the cost, or half, or whatever. So then, as my post then said, the what ended up happening then was the narrative then was to get buy-in from it. I know, but it's flexibility, isn't it? It means you can do it whenever you want. You can do it from home. So if you're working from home, so I don't believe that the whole motivation behind it was that. I think, I think we're sort of almost, I'm taking it. I'm going to hold my hands up. There's courses that I've done. I've gone, yeah, but it means I don't have to go somewhere. If that wasn't available, I would have done it the other way. And it's the same, like I've said about the budgets, that those budgets now have been cut so that they only allow for. So I know that there'll be many organisations that wouldn't pick for somebody to do their AET, so learning how to teach in person, or even via Zoom, because or you know, remotely. Once upon a time, that is the only option they would have had. That's it. They wouldn't have had the option. So now they won't even consider that. So, and I don't believe that's to do with the flexibility thing. And my concern is that now that damage has been done, because it has. Because if you think about somebody learning to teach, there's a lot of what you do is from, which will bring us on to the community in a minute. A lot of what you learn when you're teaching isn't to do with the book stuff. It is. There is. I've got books up here. I've got books up here, and there's theory stuff in there. But the real stuff is having a go at doing it, but also hearing from somebody that's done it. Yep. So the community that I'll move swiftly onto it if you want.
Well, can I just, before we do that, can I just bring in something there? Because so I'd say, because I'm a particular kind of learner, and I'd say that when I was at university, there was a handful of lectures that I found helpful. Having said that, I found that there were a lot of lectures that I found pretty dreadful, to be honest. Okay, so that actual human to, you know, piece, sitting in the lecture, actually having the person there teaching, I didn't find that helpful a lot of the time. However,
was that them teaching though? It might have been their teaching though.
Oh yeah, undoubtedly. In a lot of the time, it was both the pedagogy and the delivery style, etc. Okay, but having said that, and I will say, if e-learning had been a thing at the time, I probably would have found e-learning as reinforced learning quite useful, right? But what I did find helpful was all of the visits to the pub after the lectures, where I then sat round with other people that had been in the lecture and we discussed what we just heard in the lecture, because that to some extent helped me to make sense of the poor information in the lecture. Yeah. Because I learn via discussion. I don't learn by sort of like passive listening. It doesn't do anything for me. I get a bit bored very, very quickly. I start doodling little boxes with circles. I never take notes because I can't take notes, because if I'm taking notes, I'm not listening. So I'm not one of those people. But this is the thing. And then later on in life, I ended up working for a company that helped students take notes in lectures, you know. And I was probably a great person to be in that role and help architect that, because I struggled with taking notes. I didn't find notes very effective.
You kind of don't want someone that can do it easily, that won't understand the challenges.
Exactly that. And actually we had a group of people in the C-suite of that business who none of us found academia easy at the top level, and none of us took notes. Right? And yet we were building solutions around notes, because what basically we were building for ourselves. We wanted to find something that would help people that struggled with writing notes to take good notes. Yeah. And we looked at all sorts of different ways of doing that, where you could actively listen but still dissect information, disseminate information, and assign information to different areas, so that it was easier to then work through that information when you came back to it, and actually understand what value it was giving you. All right. And there's some very clever stuff happening in that space. I'm going to say now, there really is. But this is the important point of all of that, is that it is about choice. Whatever, and it comes back to my favorite thing again about assumptions. If we assume that everybody learns in the same way, that's where we make the biggest mistakes, because nobody learns in the same way. All right. And yes, we can try and break people down into different types of learning. Yes, I'm a visual learner, I'm an auditory learner, I'm a kinesthetic learner. But actually, most people are a mix of various ones of those different learning styles. Yeah. And also that comes into this whole arena of online or in person as well. Most of us are probably a mix of that. We probably get something from the in-person experience, and we probably get something from the online experience. But when we only offer people one thing or another, that's when we put limitations on people's ability to learn, and it does make them ineffective.
It's a concern for me though, because I go to a lot of events, and you see the e-learning people, and like I said, this person responded to me, and I get that. And my fear was that this person was talking about ones that e-learning uses lots of tech, blah 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 blah. And I said, well, a lot don't. And the problem is, if you get a company then that are looking for the cheapest option just to tick a box, they're not going to pick an option that, if it's got all that in it, it's going to cost. Of course it's going to cost. I get why it's going to cost.
Let's quickly go back, and then we'll talk about the community. Let's go back to what I said earlier, right? We know that if universities, with all of these buildings and everything else, and all of these extra admin staff and everything else, if they literally went online tomorrow, they would save money. They would save money, right? If the only way that was available for university students to learn was online in their homes, think of the cost saving to all of those universities. Massive cost savings. So we know that some of this has been driven by money. It has been driven by greed, basically. All right. E-learning was a thing that was coming in anyway. COVID just pushed that forward very quickly. And it pushed it forward very quickly because the world had to go online and communicate with each other without getting out and about in cars and planes and boats or whatever. So all of the technologies which were just sitting there ready to go, like Zoom, suddenly everybody was using them. And that really pushed on the technology, because I can't remember the figure. It was something like Zoom made in that year that COVID hit, something like 300.
I'm kind of okay with potentially that.
Yeah.
My fear is the e-learning bit that just seems to be given as a, and actually I'm pleased I put that post out, because I think all bar maybe one said that it gets given a lot of it for mandatory training, and actually mandatory training is the stuff that is important. It is really important, that stuff. Otherwise, why are we doing it? Because it's mandatory. But actually, when we're just going click, 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 usually because someone's been told they've got to do it in their lunchtime, or like with Samuel, had to do it. You know, he's a 17-year-old and he was having to do his training on his own. And he said, but I don't really understand how the platform works. So why are we actually doing this? And I would say that a lot of the time, the people that, my whole point behind the post was, okay, so the owners of the e-learning companies are saying it's great. The purse holders,
the people that are paying for it think it's great as well.
Holders, they're the ones that are celebrating. But the post was really saying, are we actually ever asking truthfully and then acting on that? What would you know, did this do what you wanted? Was it the best option? Yes or no? And I know this because I've taught carers that have said, I'm so glad we've had you come in, because when I do the other training and then we walk away, you know, when I've had, you know, I'm doing end of life care training, you can't do that properly via e-learning. You know, even me going in to teach that was hard for me to teach. But then at the end of it, having somebody that had recently lost someone say, thank you so much. Not only did you help me to deal with my work, but also I was going through it. And actually what we did and the way you dealt with it really helped me. And my fear is that if we move so far away from this, it becomes a bit of a treat and a bit of a novelty to be able to learn from somebody, whether it's on Zoom or Teams or whatever, or whether it's face to face. And my other fear is that we, like I said about the budget, or even our own budgets, we're saying, I can't actually afford that. The fact of the matter is, we would afford it if there was no other option, and that really gets to me, because I think almost what's happened now is there's so many choices of so many courses now that we're going, I'll do this and I'll quickly do that, and then I'll do that, and then I'll do that. I've just just contacted somebody and said, can we just do a check-in for the course that I've done? I know this person does a hands-on business. He's got his own business. And he said, I knew when I read it, I'm really sorry, but. And so what will I do? Offer some time to say, right, let's just go over it again. Because actually what happens is we finish the course, and even face-to-face. And then we're like, oh, life's happening now. And e-learning can do so many things, but you still don't have that interaction. You don't, like it, you just don't. And I won't move on that, because you literally don't, do you? You can't challenge your own thoughts. You can't, you know, I'll have people that I'm teaching and they'll ask me a question like, how did you deal with this? What would you do if that? Yeah, it just concerns me a lot. It concerns me that we're trying to consume too much, but actually not really consuming any of it properly. Yeah. And I hold my hand up. I hold my hand up with having done some learning.
I think the main thing for me is accountability here. I feel like when we're talking about e-learning, and I think this is the scenario that most people out there have probably experienced, is that the accountability is that your manager or whoever, especially if we're talking about work-based sort of CPD, e-learning, etc., your manager is saying, for compliance reasons, you need to have completed this, this, and this. and they'll be on your back to make sure that you've completed those modules. And they won't really care how well you've learnt that stuff in that moment. Just have you done that learning so that they can say to their superior, these people, yes, I've checked it all off and they are now all compliant because they have done this. But then it gets to the practical scenario where that information actually turns into practical application of that learning. And quite often they go, well, why don't you know that? You've done the e-learning course. Well, you know, I've forgotten it since then. What you mean is you didn't actually ever learn it in the first place because it didn't really sink in, and you probably had an option where you could go back 9 times and cheat until it's told you the right answer.
Yeah, but we've all done it though, haven't we?
And everybody's done it. Literally everybody's done it, you know. And it worries me that this is seeping into so many areas. It's like if you I can remember in one organization I worked for having to do cyber essentials training online, and it literally I got to it about 9 o'clock one evening, and I was so tired and I couldn't really think about doing it properly or whatever. And it was like most of the way through, some of it was like common sense. It was like yeah, and then there was one question just couldn't understand what it was going on about, and I kept getting it wrong, and then I kept going, oh well, there's like 6 options or whatever, and I just kept doing it until I got the right option, and then I got the right option, and then it said, oh, you've passed your cyber essentials. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm no further down the line in terms of actually understanding this. I just know that I picked the right answer in the end. But this must be happening all over the place.
But
and
not just it's happening. I think last night, this is funny, but it's also not funny, but it is. So we were sat round, and my son, bit of a joker. I met him. So I think he challenges his teachers somewhat. I can see the way his brain works. But so anyway, he's looking on the app of all the behaviours that he'd done. So there's a little log of why he got told off with this and why he got told off with that. And one of them was, he said, look at this essay this teacher's written. And I said, oh, and basically it was, you will laugh at this. The teacher had told me about this. He'd got his drink. So he'd had his drink, and I think it was just a bottle of water type one. It's more trendy to take that now. So he had the bottle of water, and he'd poured, you know what I'm going to say, he'd poured the drink into the little cap to drink it. And he was doing that. You know where this is going, don't you?
Yeah.
So of course the teacher told him off and said that you're not supposed to drink your drink like that. I don't think at this point he answered back to say, well, you know, so he said, you need to drink properly. So move on a few minutes. Next thing, he's got the bottle and he's squeezing it so that the water just stays. It hovers. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You know, if you squeeze the bottle, so it's hovering. So the teacher then tells him off again because he's not drinking properly. And then I think in the end he got his attention. So when I spoke to the teacher about this, the teacher said, but he wasn't drinking properly. And I said, I hate to tell you this. I said, but his mind is going to be saying, but have we ever been told what properly drinking out of a bottle actually is? Because for argument's sake, if you've not been told how you're supposed to drink out of a bottle, then he wasn't necessarily doing it. At the minute he was told not to drink out of the bottle in that way, he did, but the teacher then didn't say, but you're not also supposed to try and hover the water above. But of course he's been diagnosed with ADHD, and does it really matter though if your mind is working that actually in that moment you're concentrating and doing that with the water worked for you? But so I get back to the point then that when he then went through it all, he said, oh, 20, 40, 60. He went, God, since I started in year 7, he said, I've had 800 hours worth of detention time, which equates to 12 hours. And I went, oh. And he said, you know what? I said, what? He said, it's made no difference at all. And I went, oh. But my point with all that is that whilst I go into school and I say to them, what is the point of isolation? What's the point of this? They say they've done lots of work on this. I kind of go, but have you though? Because if you've got a child sitting there saying it's made no difference whatsoever, and probably the same with their friends, where do I link this to the whole education thing? I link it in that if we keep doing what we do, but we don't look at the results of that, and we just keep doing it, the amount of time and money we're wasting is incredible. So I've started looking at what the difference was, not what the difference. So I come at what I do as an educator, so as a teacher, but as an educator. So that's what my sort of grounding was in. I then worked in training roles. I've looked at what trainers do. I then educate people to teach or train with quite a lot of pushback, which again we'll talk about. Then you've got, then I start looking on LinkedIn, seeing that there's these L&D teams. I'm going, what are they? Like, I'm going, what are these? So I went to the Free Spirit thing, went to that, and I thought there was all these people. And I thought, wow, you're all part of this thing called L&D, so learning and development. And I'm going, this is what I do as a teacher, but there we go. So I'm in these things. You went to it, and I'm going, there's people that do video things, there's people that do e-learning creation. I'm going, wow, as a teacher, I was all of that. Like literally, I was all of that. Then they start talking about how they get their work, and I'm going, okay, I'm listening now. Like now I am listening because I really want to know these people that get the work. What is the work they're getting, and where are they getting this work? So then I start listening to those agencies, and I'm going, agencies? Wow, how does this all work then? There's agencies that have sort of like there'll be a job that needs doing, and then they'll advertise all these different people. Well, because I'm sitting here as a teacher going, wow, I was all that. I was the whole team. So you see all of this. Then I start looking into it. Then I look over into what's it called? Instructional design. So I'm going, what is all this instructional design thing they're talking about? All right, okay, that's what I did as a teacher, because it means designing programs. So there's a whole job that someone does doing that. Then I see that the Americans seem to do, that is a thing, and we seem to have moved it over here a little bit. But like I said, my concern here was that there's a lot of people doing the strategy stuff over here. So we talk about change, the culture change management, all this kind of stuff. My fear and my concern is that this isn't speaking to this. So there's a lot of this, and you know that I've come off things and gone, I kind of knew that stuff, but I didn't really know, like, how can I put my opinion forward for it? Because these people look like they know what they're talking about. And you're like, yeah, but you do too. These people sit over here and will definitely look at someone like me as a teacher and go, you haven't got a clue because you're teaching kids. Actually, that's not what I was doing, but you know. Then you've got the trainers. These people over here often don't speak to the trainers. They're like, we'll wheel you out to deliver the stuff that was created. Quite often the trainer might have been asked to write that. My fear with all of this is there's a real disconnect here, a real disconnect, and that if the people that are doing all the strategy stuff don't know the challenges that face the people that do the face-to-face stuff. But the biggest thing is that when you are the person that's on the front line, so to speak, you hear stuff. You hear the stuff about business that, quite frankly, nobody else ever will, really. You can have all these meetings if you want, but as soon as you put senior management in there, it will happen. And my fear is that if we don't harness what goes on in here for these people to get it, to listen to the fact that when you're hearing people time and time again saying e-learning doesn't work, these people can keep talking about budgets. Fine, you can keep talking about them, but you literally might as well get your money and put it down the drain then. But also that the people that are the trainers aren't equipped when they go out and do it. they're often not equipped. It's, oh, you've been doing this job, you've done the job a long time, so you can go and do it. And they end up taking on a whole lot more than they've ever been prepared to do so. And it is a bit of a sink or swim moment. And they're also a lot of the time doing their job as well on top of that. And now I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry. Oh, I can't hear you, Ray.
Sorry, I muted myself for a minute. I think what I heard in that, because there were two very distinct stories in there, was that there's a big move in education, has moved from education to risk management and reputation management. Okay, and that's the big shift in education. So let's unpack that quickly. You started off by talking about your son in school, in isolation, etc., and you know, there's lots of different things these days. It's confusing for any parent out these days. We used to have detentions, that's all we used to have, but now there's detentions, isolations, there's something else that I can't remember what it's called, and another room. You can go to different types of, like, they don't like to call it punishment, but punishment at school for having done wrong things. Most of them involve sitting in a room doing some work unsupervised or supervised by one person who's not really interested. And what you're saying is, do we look at that, and do we look at, you know, the cost of that? I think the problem is, yes, I think they have looked at the cost of that, and I think what they've worked out is that actually in schools, because I have a problem at the moment with one of my children in school, in as much as she keeps getting put in cover. There's a cover room, and the cover room is, and she spends hours in that cover room, which means there's no teacher. So she's not getting taught. And if that was a business and I was paying that business, I'd be going, this is not good enough, right? I feel like almost going to Ofsted about it and saying, this is not good enough. These kids are not actually getting taught. They're literally just being put into cover. Why so many cover lessons?
You can't get teachers, but that's another thing.
Well, they can't get teachers, but or do they not want to pay for teachers? You know, to me, all of these things actually work back down to actually what can we do within the budgets that we have, and how can we keep budgets tight in order to be effective?
If it can be justified in a way that probably most parents aren't going to question. I think, you know, you said about the business bit there. So we had Dean Cotton on here like a long time ago, and he had worked many settings like I had. So kids with what would be called challenging behaviour once. I like to call it distress reaction. But so kids with behaviour that would be coming around from whatever reason. So he'd worked in lots of different schools, lots of different settings, the same as I had. And he said, but the thing that came out of all of it was that if you can keep punishing, no matter what you call it, it doesn't really matter. And like Oliver said, you have to write the reasons why you ended up in there and what you've learned from it and everything. But the key to it was, what he said is, nothing happens. It's like incident reports, accident reports, something happens to it. But incident reports, nothing happens. So it just gets filed away again and again and again. He developed some software then that actually looked at it. So it looked at what happened and what can we learn from it. And I genuinely believe that whether it's school, whether it's a care home, whether it's a care setting for elderly people, people with learning disabilities, whatever it is, when you're taking that action, are you doing it because it is just a holding bay? And quite frankly, that's what I feel that it is. They want disruption-free learning. So you're disrupting things. Can you get out? But actually, what are we doing? Because that everybody, all of us deserve the right to be able to learn, and have the support that we need. And I think that's why with what I do it in the way that I do it, because not enough of this stuff gets looked at. So as you say, like your daughter's being put into cover, but when are we going to like look at the end result of that? When are we going to look at what's happening as a
Well,
result?
we'll look at the end result of that when she gets her GCSE results, and potentially they're not as good as they should be because
but then that just becomes the statistic, doesn't it? That they'll say, "Oh dear, we need to do better." That doesn't actually help her or all the other kids.
Well, I was going to say, or though, what happens is that actually that doesn't happen because we as parents will push her at home. She will learn on her own accord. She will do the work. She will still get good grades. And then they've gone, oh, actually, that has worked, right? This is the problem. Is the problem that this stuff doesn't actually work for the schools, right? But is it just pushing the responsibility somewhere else? I think half the time what happens is it pushes the responsibility somewhere else. And I think this is the thing that's happening in business as well, right? It pushes the responsibility off of the organization and it pushes the responsibility onto the individual. So if the individual wants to get there, wants to actually learn this stuff, except that the organization are no longer really cared about how that delivery is. It's up to that person to learn, right? So the responsibility goes back to the individual.
Yeah,
right?
even if that's to do with the job. I mean, I see time and time again trainers that come on my course. So they're very lucky if they have been, because many businesses, if you don't have to do it, they'll go, oh, don't worry about it. What will end up happening is the person that probably steps up to be a trainer, there's probably been an internal thing that said, does anybody want to take on this role? I can tell the people that do, because they will be the sort of people. You very rarely get somebody that becomes a trainer that probably never should, that will come on that course anyway.
Yeah.
So they then go, this is great. I've come on this course and now I can learn. You know, I've been doing it for a while, and then they'll say, oh my God, I've been doing it rubbish up till now. And I say, no, you've been doing your best. My concern is that and that's part of the reason my reason behind the community is that in a lot of organizations now, there isn't the structure put in place to support somebody that's doing training, because you've got training managers that don't have any experience in training. Not their fault if they've been taken on to do the job. So they then will be managing somebody who's a number of trainers. My concern, because I know this, is that these people come in. So I teach them for 2 days, and third day they do their micro teach. My fear then is I've got people that are trying to put a micro teach together that struggle with that. They struggle with that. So they may have been given the training, the stuff they've got to deliver already. What people walk away from me is they start saying, actually, I've been told I have to do it this way. We have to have this background colour. We're not allowed to do this. We're supposed to do that. And they say, well, actually, now I know that this isn't the case. And I said, no, it's not. I said, now you've got something to back it up to be able to go back and say, well, actually. And my fear with all of it is, what is the support that those trainers are getting? And I would more on say, isn't.
And that very neatly brings it round to why you've started Source of the Source, and your other offering as well. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is it these trainers need? What is it that they're not necessarily getting at the moment? And why have you created this community? What's it do? What's it for?
So I saw for a long time. So I trained to be a teacher like 19 years ago. So that was because I wanted to train carers. So I did that, and then I sort of fell into teaching really. And there's actually this very different. Training and teaching in the academic world is quite different. So I sort of drifted into that and actually felt completely out of my depth really, that everything was very structured, and you couldn't move outside of anything. So I was doing that for a while. And then I eventually, down the line, fell into teacher training, and I thought, wow, I really like this. It was good. It helped me be able to develop people. that bit I really, really liked. But I also realised the reason I didn't like the teaching in the school bit was because quite often you had to squash people's personalities because you were like, I've got to get through this. So I'm teamed with all of that. I then start teaching for like freelancing, doing the teacher training, really liking it, but feeling like I was being a bit naughty because I was adding bits on, not taking things away because you have to do certain bits. So I then start doing it for myself. But in the thousands of people I've taught, there was a number of things that came up. I had trainers that have been doing it for years that clearly had no support. They had nobody to help them. Then I had people that had their own businesses. So then they'd come on the course because they wanted to learn how to train. So they're going to start an academy. And then they would come to me and say, what can I do after this to help me? And I think, well, you could do the level 4, which is quite academic, it's quite lengthy, it's quite costly, but actually it's still not going to do what you need it to do, because I know, because I've got my own training business. So I thought I can't push people to do that. And then you've got the people that have been training for many, many years that haven't really learned about the equality and diversity and the neurodiversity side of things. So I'm looking at these, and training managers as well. So training managers, they get made to be a training manager and they don't really have any support. So I then put together a program that would actually do all of what the 4 would be. But what I see time and time again is that those people don't have any support. So what do? I know I'm going to ask Marianne. So the phone gets picked up, the email, or people go, just ask Marianne, she knows. I should call it that, just ask Marianne. All the little phone calls were adding up. Just ask Marianne, she'll know. Which awarding body should I use? Should I get CPD? Shouldn't I? And the reason why I came up with the source bit was because I literally have been running on empty. You know, whilst I'm funding everybody else's businesses in a roundabout way, which is wonderful. I want to help people, but I have got bills to pay myself. But also was that actually I don't want to be grabbing bits of time here and there to help people. I wanted to be able to put people in a place where they could learn from me and from each other. I see on lots of Facebook groups for first aid, the number of times somebody will say, what would I do? Next thing is you've got 50 comments come on and this person goes, I don't know. And I even the other day just messaged this guy and said, look, just quick, give me a ring. I said that I'm not going to necessarily, I couldn't actually do what he needed. And I said, I've seen you've got loads of different answers on here. Just have a conversation with me. So we had a conversation, and then I said, actually, I've got a friend that my friend Dave, he can help you because he knows about this sort of stuff. And, you know, I passed his details on or whatever. And the guy messaged me back yesterday. And as I said, I hope it helped. And he said, it did. Thank you. He said, you're absolutely fab. He said, exactly what I needed. And he said, you're really genuine. And that was it. It was just 2 people that could help each other out in a safe place without millions of different varying levels of support. And I think sometimes we need that go-to person that we feel safe with.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a space of trust, it's a space of respect, but it's also a space where people can come and learn and develop as well. So you're going to be running practical sessions in there which people can drop into. They will learn as they go, they will develop. It's basically CPD for trainers, okay, within a space, within a network space where you can learn off of your peers as well, away from the noise of social media, etc. And it's curated around learning, developing courses, learning how to train more effectively, etc. as well. So that's one offering. If you'd like to join Source of the Source, we will put the link for that under this now.
And having a space to be able to having a space, I think we forget not everybody has got it. If you're a freelancer, it's quite a scary place to be. You know, like I said, I've taught many people, and then Dave has supported people. And I said, but who would those people go to if they didn't have you? He said, I don't know. Because the problem is when you teach it, when you train in a certain sector, whether we like it or not everybody's supportive with that, because they fear that you're going to take work away from them.
Yep. No, that makes absolute sense. And there's another offering as well. And the second offering is, if for anybody out there that really wants to get hands-on, one-to-one CPD with Marianne, you've developed a course which you can run over the next 12 months. So you can do this with Marianne over the next 12 months, and it really does push your ability as a trainer on. So do you want to just say a little bit about that?
Yeah, like I said, that was kind of 7 years of constantly seeing that people needed something else, that really they wanted that CPD. And I've had many conversations with people where they have, like I said, you've got the L&D people, so they do lots of things, then people fall into training. A lot of people do it. Literally, that's what happens. Very few people probably go, do you know what, I'm going to have a career as a trainer. It just doesn't really necessarily happen. So then what happens is these people do their job, or they do their work, they get work, they keep getting work. That's great, they keep getting work. Then when I start looking at what they're doing, and I ask the question about aims and objectives, they sort of shift around and they go, yeah, but I know it, sort of thing. And the minute I mention about doing any actual qualifications, of course, for various reasons, people get scared off. But I still said, but you still need to know this stuff. You could go doing little courses here and there, but usually they're not going to be enough. So what I did was so this book here, this is the level 4, so it's the next level up. It's very much aimed at people that work in colleges and FE, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of worth in it, an absolute lot of worth. So what I did was I took this, made it into 9 modules, so it could be somebody that's already delivering, or they're already doing it. So I've got there's a section on classroom management, whatever the classroom is, it could be outside. There's one on course design, there's one on resources. The main idea of it is that you've already got your business, or you're already in the workplace, but you want to change it up a bit, or you've got a problem with that and you don't know what to do with it. So you bring it to the session, and then we work on it. So we go off into groups, or you do it with me, whichever happens. So it's a bit like a masterclass. So it's like, if I were to do it as a group, it would be 3 hours, but you can do it however you want. I can send people off with homework, so that actually in the end, you come away with something that you've done, because that's what a lot of people don't do. So that the whole idea of that program is, and you can pick as whichever bits you want. So some people might not need to do some bits, but some people might say, do you know, I don't really know about this neurodiversity stuff, and I have no idea how to support people when it comes to people that've got ADHD, whether it's dyslexia, whatever it is. But so whilst I'm looking at trainers, I'm also looking at facilitators as well, coaches. There's a lot of people that are coaches that then sort of fall into training because, various reasons, and speakers even, because I know we all come at all this from different angles. So what I want to get across is, I know a lot of people fear education. I'm not scary. My kids would say I am, but I'm not. I will work with you at where you're at and look at what you need to do and what you want to do. That's it, really.
Thank you. No, that's really good. And I think it's really worthwhile. If you're a trainer, coach out there, if you want to develop those skills, you may have fallen into training accidentally, and so therefore you might feel a little bit of imposter syndrome sometimes with some of the stuff that you're doing. So this would be a great place for you to start.
Give you a foundation. I'll give you a foundation.
If Marianne will adapt this to whoever comes in. If you're an experienced trainer or an experienced coach, but you feel like there's still stuff to learn, and who wouldn't? Because ultimately, when we stop learning, we stop thriving. So if you feel like you want somebody that can keep you accountable to your development professionally, then this is the other thing for you. So we have put the link now. I've already gone and done it. If you want to join Source of the Source, it's there. It's only £50 a month. But there's also an incentive. If you join and then you bring others in, you can make money out of it too. How brilliant is that? So there's a referral scheme in there as well that you can take advantage of. So do go and have a look at that today. If you want to join the wait list, we're just asking for £20 up front at the moment, and then £30 when it all starts, which is the 6th of March. If you want to get involved with Marianne's training program for the next year, do DM Marianne straight after watching this. Get in touch and she'll be happy to have a little meeting with you about that. Great show. Thank you so much. We've unpacked an awful lot there today. There's a lot of training out there that leaves a lot to be desired at the moment, and you know, anything we can do to make that better, I think is a really great idea. I feel
empowering people to be better. I always say to people, that was great, but it could be even better if you did this. And if people don't have the skills to make it even better, a lot of the time, because they fear, if you've fallen into training, people often think someone like me strolling up to it is a threat. And I'm like, I'm literally not. You're talking to the person that didn't like learning, that struggled. I'm absolutely not to be feared. You know, I love just casting my eye over something and saying, well, actually, it's really great, but if you did this bit, it's going to have that much more impact. You know, how wouldn't it be amazing though, as well, for the trainers? Like one of the units is on quality assurance. It's the bit that trainers don't even think about. I say, okay, well, if you want other trainers to start delivering this for you, how are you going to monitor that? And they go, I don't know. So those are the kind of things that you don't want to go and do a quality assurance qualification. Believe me, I've done it. You don't want to do it. But you need to do enough to be able to run your business well, or to be able to go and get more work, because you can justify why. Surely people.
Yeah. So this community could also be for entrepreneurs out there who want to make training people or facilitating training part of your business. So it may be that you want to deliver sales training, but you just want to actually understand how training works a bit better in order for you to be able to make sure that you do that properly. It might be that you have something like a property development business and you're going to start delivering training to people that they pay for so that they can go off and do the same thing as you, now having learnt those skills. But you having learnt those skills and then you teaching other people how to do that is a completely different thing. So if you want to get good at training, then this is the place for you to come. Okay, so it's called The Source of the Source, same as the podcast. The link is below in this. Do give it a click. That's all we've got to say for today. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, with more of this. But until then, from Marianne and me, thanks for watching. Do keep pushing yourself as a trainer out there if you're watching. If you're L&D, stop and explain what that is sometime to somebody. That would be good too. Till then, bye for now.
Bye.